All right, here we go. How you doing, everybody, and welcome to the Moffett on the Mic podcast. I am Craig Moffett. Alongside me, as always, is Chris Klim. You can check us out on Spotify. You can check us out on YouTube. You can check us out soon on Apple Podcasts. You can follow my show at Moff on the Mic on Instagram. And joining us is one of our really good friends. He was a friend with ours when we had the podcast way back when. We always talk to him when he wants to talk Buffalo Bills football. Unfortunately, this was not a good weekend for the Buffalo Bills, but he's a former content writer for Buffalo Rumblings. He's had a Bills podcast, and he is our good friend. He is the one and only Jaime D'Amico. Jaime, thank you for taking the time. Thank you for remembering us, by the way.
It's good to be here, and I would never forget you guys. You guys, you're great at what you do. And in fact, when you're on your hiatus, I was actually looking for the show, couldn't find anything, and was very disappointed. Very disappointed.
I think a few people were. We just didn't realize it, but just things came up, and we just could never put the time together to make it work. So, and then one day I just saw Klim on just rambling about Notre Dame because he was really mad about Notre Dame not being in the CFP. And then I just said, I got to call Klim and see about getting the show back on. And here we are. So,
well, that's great. And I know a thing or two about going on hiatus. I am no longer with any of the two Bills podcasts that I was doing. One of them had my name on it.
But you're not bitter, right?
No. Oh, no. You know what? I'm not bitter at all this week. I'm not sitting here with this glass of whiskey that I just spilled on myself. I'm not bitter over my Buffalo Bills or their terrible decision to fire their head coach. I'm not bitter that my hair is falling out. I went and got a haircut, and she made me look like 1992 Vanilla Ice with this weird ass pompadour. I'm not bitter about any of that shit, guys.
Well, at least you have hair to style. I'm slowly losing mine at the age of 30.
Well, hey, thanks, man. I'm at the age of 50, and I'm feeling a lot better about myself now. Thanks for being you, Clem.
Of course.
All right, Jaime, let's dive in. Obviously the elephant in the room was Sean McDermott getting fired. But my question to you is, are you surprised that Brandon Beane didn't get fired? That Brandon Beane is going to be the one to pick the next Bills head coach, as Beane and McDermott were side by side in Carolina and then side by side in Buffalo?
Yes, absolutely. And McDermott was responsible for bringing Beane into Buffalo. And obviously there was a fracture in that relationship. But if you look at this current iteration of the Buffalo Bills, yes, they did not make a Super Bowl again this year, but you cannot point at the head coach as being the reason for that. This version of the Buffalo Bills in the 2025 season, they were lacking talent. In my estimation, you need about 8 blue chip players in order to be Super Bowl caliber. And to me, they've got about 4. You've got Josh Allen and James Cook, and then Deion Dawkins at left tackle. And last year he was. So it's sort of iffy as to where Christian Benford, the cornerback, is considered a blue chipper this year, but he's paid like one, as is Greg Rousseau. So when you sort of look at the fact that the Bills are going to be $11 million more next year, it didn't look to me like there was a coaching issue. It looked like a talent issue. So now you have chosen to put all of your chips onto the square of the person who, in the last 8 years, has only 2 Pro Bowlers. That's the guy you want making all of the decisions? Yeah, I'm absolutely shocked. I thought if anybody was going to go, it was going to be the general manager.
I think the Sean McDermott firing was because it's funny enough that happened because I was just literally before the firing happened, I was gonna think, I'm like, the Bills have made the playoffs in the divisional and AFC championship game how many years in a row? Maybe 5, 6. I was like, then what's got to change for them to do it? Because something's not clicking here. They finally get past the Patrick Mahomes bump, and it's like, all right, cool, this is the Bills' year, and then here comes Bo Nix and the Broncos. So
Right.
what do you personally think has to change for the Bills to get over that hump and get to the Super Bowl?
So earlier on, I thought that the issue was more that Sean McDermott hadn't figured out how to win in the playoffs. You look at this 13 seconds debacle that they had, and that had so much to do with McDermott stepping in and making the decisions of what the special teams and defense was going to do, and they were terrible decisions. Bills Mafia will never forget him for that specific game. But it's sort of a combination of them never being able to get the pass rush and defensive line right. And we've talked about this in the last few times that I've been on. Everybody expected more out of Ed Oliver, who's better than you might think, but they really haven't found a consistent pass rusher despite all of the swings that they've taken at it. And their inability to control the line of scrimmage is really what shows up in the playoffs. You end up with a QB putting up over 300 yards and the other team running. The run defense has been an issue for years. And it's literally the Bills' defensive line has always gotten pushed around. Now, I don't know if that's the archetype of the players that they want. That, it seems like they have a million left defensive ends and nobody can play on the right side. And it seems every year they bring in somebody new and there's high hopes, but that guy plays left defensive end too and can't really play at his best from the right side. So, it's you would think that by this point they would have figured out what the issue is. Are they relying too much on strength? Do they need more speed? Whatever that is. And I will speak to the defensive tackles that they choose. They're always the three technique, penetrate, get in the backfield type of players, and they're never eat up two blockers kinds of players. And it's just consistently they're bringing in the same folks and getting the same results. That's what I point to as the defensive line not getting it right. Because it's certainly not, and I'm sorry to be long-winded here, but it's certainly not the offense. If you look at the EPA per play of the offense and defense, when the Bills win and lose, it's only when they play poorly on defense that the Bills lose in the playoffs.
So, Jamie, now that the Bills are looking for a head coach, do you see Brandon Beane maybe hiring from within? Maybe for like a guy like Joe Brady as possible, or better yet, do you think it'll be from the outside? But more importantly, if not Joe Brady, who does Jaime D'Amico think would be a good replacement for McDermott as head coach?
A good replacement. Okay, it's not real deep at this point now that Stefanski and Harbaugh are off the market. Who do I think? God, I really like Davis Webb. He was a third-string QB in Buffalo. He's now the passing game coordinator in Denver. And they basically said from the time he was in college that someday he was going to make a great head coach. And the Bills, as an organization, loved him. But there's one thing that I think is going to prevent that. He and Josh Allen are best friends. And I don't think your head coach can be 30 years old and best friends with your star player and there to be the right dynamic there. Outside of that, I would be curious to see what it would look like for somebody, even if they didn't have a winning record, a person with former head coaching experience, somebody who is not going to be just a pawn to the new president of football operations, Brandon Beane, because clearly they had a power struggle of some sort that Beane won. Mm-hmm. And rumor has it that there was a meeting between Terry Pegula, the owner, Brandon Beane, the GM, and Sean McDermott about 5 weeks ago, where McDermott complained about the amount of talent that he had on the roster, I think very justifiably. And Beane got really bent out of shape over that. Terry Pegula didn't love it, and we see what the results are. So I feel like you have to hire somebody who's going to be willing to push back on the general manager as opposed to letting them reign supreme. Most organizations have the GM and head coach reporting directly to the owner. That's not going to be the case here. So let's just say somebody with some balls on them.
Now, do you think it would be a guy like maybe like Mike McCarthy, or you just had Raheem Morris fired from Atlanta, or Mike McDaniel? You think it'd be one of those guys?
I don't necessarily think it's going to be somebody like that. Those are the players that I wanted. Great question. I didn't answer the second half of the question. I think it's going to be somebody that Brandon Beane knows that he can control. It's going to be somebody getting their first crack at it, or somebody who's just desperate to stay in the league. I think I had heard a rumor that they have their eyes on Clint Kubiak, the offensive coordinator from Seattle, but who knows? You take a look at Ben Johnson, he went 2 hiring cycles without jumping in because he wanted to make sure that he ended up in the right situation. Now, the Bills are going to seem like the right situation to most coaches because you have Josh Allen, and Josh is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Obviously, top 3, top 5, top 2 to some. That's very enticing. But you have to worry about, what is that reporting structure like? What kind of authority you're going to get as head coach? John Harbaugh would have never taken this job. Mike Tomlin for a year, and think that anywhere he goes, he's going to want final say on just about all decisions. Yeah, it's got to be somebody who's desperate for a job. Well, those people, they're probably going to have their pick of the people who are the coaches that want to get to the next level. But yeah, it's going to be a first timer only.
So Jamie, I was looking at the Bills are, I think I saw they're about $7 million over the cap going into this off season, and they have a lot of. I was checking to see who their free agents were. And they have a laundry list of free agents, from what I was seeing. So you're just to name a few off the top of my head that seemed to me the most important: Matt Milano, Joey Bosa, AJ Epinesa, and DeMar Hamlin, just to name a few. I think. Trubisky's on that list, but I noticed also there wasn't a lot of offensive players. Like almost like all the offensive players are pretty much locked in for another year. So being as though they're $7 million over the cap and they're going to be making a lot of cuts and they're just to get under, do you see any free agents of their own that they should prioritize?
Well, they are actually $11 million over the cap, and their starting center and starting left guard are also going to be free agents. So who are they going to bring back? Well, they very clearly value centers with experience, though I think that they have a backup in Alec Anderson who they want in the starting lineup. He's played at 3 different positions. He's played at guard, tackle, and center. I don't know if they're going to try to bring back Connor McGovern, their center, and bring in Alec Anderson to play left guard. But yeah, you hit the nail on the head. They're losing a lot of people. Shaq Thompson, who ended up their starting linebacker toward the end of the year, he's a free agent. Taylor Rapp was their starting safety at the beginning of the year until he got injured. He is a free agent this year. And then they have some of the receivers that, like Brandon Cooks, who was getting a lot of playing time at the end of the year. He's a free agent too. So who are they going to prioritize bringing back? I can't imagine it's going to be a linebacker. Milano, he used to be a game wrecker, but he's getting a little old. He's had some injuries. Shaq Thompson, I don't think he comes back. I think it's going to be difficult to figure out who's going to be back in the fold until you know who the head coach is going to be and what sort of system they're going to run. But in my estimation, they're going to lose most of them. They have to. They are just going to have to make a change for, in my estimation, the worst. And they're never going to say it out loud. But 2026 is going to be a rebuilding year, which is not what you want with your 29-year-old star quarterback in his prime.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not what you want. But to even go off of that, speaking of, you guys are talk about losing guys to the free agency. Who are some guys you think they should sign and or should draft with this upcoming offseason?
It's really interesting because you can point to two areas where they have just struggled the last couple of years. One of which is the pass rush. They would go a month at a time without sacking the quarterback, and I'm not exaggerating here. And wide receiver, the Bills have one of the worst receiver groups in the NFL, if not the worst. And you've got to figure out a way of building that. The Bills have, outside of Keon Coleman, they've never spent more than like a fifth-round asset, a draft pick, on a wide receiver. And haven't really spent big money either. The only real swing they took is when they traded for Stephon Diggs, which thank God they did at the time, because at that point in their development, that's exactly the player that they needed. But that's just where it's glaring that if you're not doing everything for Josh Allen that you can, you're not doing enough. And they're clearly not doing enough because they basically have a reasonably nice slot receiver that would be a number 2 at best, or a really high-end number 3. But they don't have anybody who they can rely on to get open and catch the ball at any given time.
Now, at the same time, though, I know you just mentioned that it could be a rebuilding year for Buffalo, that they don't want to say, but they're also moving into a brand new stadium next year. Does that put a lot of pressure on Bean to make sure he puts a competent roster together going into a brand new stadium, dealing with, playing the Patriots twice a year and, everything else? But I would think going into a brand new stadium with a mediocre roster would not be what Buffalo Bills fans want. So does this pretty much extend Brandon Bean, though, because he's going to pick his own coach again, and he's going to be tied to that coach for at least a couple more years, depending on who he decides to hire? So how much pressure is going to be on Bean, knowing that he's over the cap, knowing he's going to have to make some tough decisions? How much pressure is going to be on Bean for him to put together a good roster to compete again in 2026 while the window is still open for the Buffalo Bills?
That is a great question. And I got to tell you, I like the way you think. This is one of the reasons I love coming on this podcast. You guys ask great questions, and I like the way you both think. And I particularly love Clem's affection for Tab Cola. Rest in peace.
Yes, I was so happy you remembered that. You can't find it anywhere. You can't.
I forgot it, man. For the record, I forgot that.
I did get onto eBay and I found that you can get a 12-pack for like $40-something, and it's probably many years old.
Yeah. Don't give him any ideas, Jamie. Like he'll go to eBay right now.
Oh man, yeah, you better not drink that. So Brandon Bean took a heel turn back right around the draft. He gets on a local radio show, and they were talking about how the Bills didn't address the wide receiver position. And he went up one side and down the other of these radio hosts. And to their credit, they handled it very well. They were very professional about the whole thing. But he basically said to them, and I quote, "You guys were bitching about us not getting a receiver, just like you were bitching about us drafting Josh Allen and not Josh Rosen back in 2018. And he gave him the whole, like, I know what I'm doing. You guys don't. So stop your complaining," sort of thing. Well, the community, Western New York, really turned on him at that point. Because what the radio hosts were echoing was the sentiment of a lot of fans. So he put a lot of pressure on himself with that to be like, well, hey, according to what he says, I guess the receiver room is okay. No, it's not. It's awful. So now this move, overall, the sentiment is Sean McDermott was not the problem, Brandon Bean was. So has he added pressure to himself? Absolutely. But there may be something to be said for that general manager whose back is up against the wall, who's going to do whatever it takes to win right now by hook or by crook. And, you see it with Howie Roseman in Philadelphia, who's willing to mortgage the future for today, yet somehow the future always works out for him. Maybe he's just smarter than everyone else in the league. And that wouldn't, I don't think I'd be speaking out of school to say, yeah, he is the best general manager in the league. But at the same time, I think that the owner, Terry Pagula, is going to give Bean a little bit of runway to see his vision come true. But the ego of him to start planting stories about a month ago about how this could be McDermott's last season if the Bills don't win the Super Bowl, which we all know that he was doing now. There's a lot of ego there. And he made it clear that he hears the criticism. So now he's going to feel the need to react to it. It's going to be interesting.
So, I may ask maybe a controversial question here in regards to the Bills, but I'm kind of looking at it from a point of, like they're kind of like the Cowboys. They have a great quarterback in Dak Prescott and Josh Allen, but they never can get over that hump of getting to the Super Bowl. So, and I know from my personal friends that they're starting to turn on Dak Prescott a little bit now. At what point do you think, or if ever, that Bills fans will turn on Josh Allen for not getting over that hump?
I see what you're asking, but I don't think that is going to be the case because Dak Prescott has never been fully embraced by Cowboy fans. Like, there's always been a quiet murmur amongst fans that maybe he's not the guy, he's not a top QB. Josh Allen is he's got to be the most beloved Buffalo Bill since Jim Kelly. And Jim Kelly wasn't even beloved like in his early playing days. He became that later on. But yeah, I think Josh Allen he's such a personality. And he's so good at saying the right things, and it just seems like he cares so much about winning, about his teammates, about the community, that it just I think that he has such a long leash. It'll probably not be in the 2020s that they turn on him. It'll probably have to be in the 2030s.
So we were talking before, you just mentioned about how they only really have a select number of like star players, and their receiving core is very weak. And outside of maybe James Cook, and I don't know if you want to throw Dalton Kincaid in there as like top receiving threats or just offensive threats. So my question to you is, because it's kind of like a double-edged sword in a way, because you mentioned before you think the Buffalo Bills are rebuilding. However, they do play in a conference with two bad teams, being the Dolphins and the Jets. And the Patriots, who they play pretty well, like they're pretty competitive against New England for the most part. So my question to you is, how long before you start to think that their window to compete is closing?
Josh Allen's under contract for 7 more years, and I got to think that as long as he's there and he's healthy, the window can be open.
I was going to say now, like Craig just mentioned, we have two bad teams in the AFC East, us being fans of one of those teams, and
I have no idea what that's like. I never experienced a 17-year playoff drought or anything like that.
I don't well, going to the Jets for a minute. It's frustrating. I'll tell you that. It's very frustrating being a Jets fan. Hence why I'm not even wearing a Jets jersey right now. But that's besides the point. So again, Craig mentioned, the Patriots being, good now. Were you as pissed off as us seeing like, oh, the Patriots were only bad for like 2 seasons and now great. Here they are again. We got a resurgence of the Patriots, and like, are you as pissed off as we are?
Well, I don't know if I'm as pissed off as you are. I'm not nearly as pissed off as my mother told me she was yesterday, which I thought was pretty amazing. um, I feel like I'm not nearly as upset as I should be because it's a new cast of characters there.
Right.
Like if Belichick was still there and all of a sudden they were good again, yeah. I'd be thinking about who I was going to run over with my car. Yeah, I think I haven't built up enough animosity toward Vrabel and Drake May yet. It's like I'm still in the process of kind of being in awe of how good of a coach Vrabel clearly is, and I'm shocked at how good Drake May has become as fast as he has. Am I annoyed? Yeah, not pissed off yet, but definitely annoyed. But I think that I'm also coming from a different place because 7 out of the last 8 years, the Buffalo Bills have been in the playoffs.
That's true.
It's a lot more upsetting to see a team turn itself around when it feels like the playoffs are so far off.
Well, that's what it essentially is. And like you said, like it's like I'm in awe of Mike Vrabel and Drake May because before last season, I wanted Mike Vrabel as the head coach for the Jets.
Yeah.
So I wanted him. So I'm like, okay, great. And then I see Drake May, who I don't hate yet. Like I want to hate him, just like I want to hate Josh Allen, but I can't. I really like Josh Allen a lot. But yeah, I'm in awe of what they're able to do, and us being struggling for the past million years, and the Patriots were able to turn around like this. It's like, what the hell?
Yeah, it's it goes to show that it can be done. And when you have a team that's just toiling in mediocrity or worse, you wonder why. And all we can do is play armchair quarterback, but ownership has a hell of a lot to do with it.
Okay, Jamie, my last question for you is I guess I don't want to say like gun to your head right now, but who's the Buffalo Bills coach? Like maybe not your pick, but who do you think just right now, who is probably, in your opinion, who would most likely be who would Buffalo Bills name as their head coach?
Okay, here's what I think. Based on virtually nothing, it's going to be Clint Kubiak, or they're really going to shit the bed and hire Brian Daboll.
Are you serious? Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Josh Allen had his best years with Brian Daboll as the offensive coordinator. They got along well, even though Daboll.
Oh, did we lose him? Oh, I think we lost Jamie. Oh, we're so close. We had the answer, Clem.
We literally. I mean, I don't hate Brian. I don't hate that answer though for Brian Daboll.
Well, the way I like that a lot. If Robert Saleh can get a job, then that means okay. There you. Okay, Jamie, we lost you, so we missed that whole comment. So you may have to say it again.
Okay, what was the last thing you heard?
All I heard was Brian Daboll, and then it just went out.
Okay. Josh Allen had his best years with Brian Daboll, and they apparently get along really well. And so, despite the fact that Daboll is a complete idiot who does things like yells at the medical staff to get his quarterback on the field and that he's completely in over his head as a head coach. That's somebody who Brandon Beane can push around, and Josh Allen would be happy to see the guy.
I like it.
Jamie, you're the best, man. Thank you so much for coming on our show. Thank you for coming on our show. Thank you for being our first guest back as our return. We couldn't think of anybody better to have on. And we are just really happy that you were able to take time to hang out with us and talk some Buffalo Bills football. So thank you very much.
Hey, thank you. And I promise to be less liquored up next time. No, I'm just kidding.
I actually expected that cup to be a little more full.
I think
it's actually not even booze.
You're gonna have to join me next time we are on the show.
Yeah.
And And hey, let's get you up to the new stadium.
Yeah, one of these days,
Mafia.
I got to get to Bills Stadium. My brother-in-law is a huge Buffalo Bills fan. So,
Yeah,
like,
I
one of these
definitely
days,
wanna
I would definitely want to try to get up to the new stadium. Absolutely.
I got to go through a
You know,
table at some point in my life.
they'll talk smack, but they'll still be nice to you.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Yeah, I need to go
Jamie, you're
through a
the
table
best.
at some point before I get too old.
Thank
Thanks,
you so
guys.
much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Bye.
All right, that is the one and only Jaime D'Amico. Whenever we love to talk Buffalo Bills football, that is our man. And as you can see, it's nice to just get back into the swing of things with past guests that always come on our show and always have a good time, especially guests that make fun of Clem for drinking tab.
Look, I mean, you know what's funny? I was gonna bring that up too. I was like, I really hope he remembers me drinking it because that was like one of the last few times we had him on the show.
I do remember that. I remember the can of tab too.
Because like I just had it because like my parents always bought the tab because me and my brother liked it. We liked drinking the tab, so I just had it out, and he was like, "Are you drinking tab?" And I'm like, "Yeah." Like what? like so casually, like.
So we're just going to focus on one other topic today before we call it a night. We're going to come back tomorrow with another show. We were originally supposed to have Jake Asman on. Unfortunately, Jake could not make it as he's covering tonight's St. John's game. But he will be on soon. We're trying to work on possibly getting him on next week. So hopefully, if we can, it would be amazing to have him on. So we were supposed to, like I said, we apologize. We thought that we were going to have him on, but unfortunately, his schedule was not able to permit it. So we'll look to have him on possibly next week, and we'll definitely make an announcement about it as well. So the coaching dominoes are starting to fall in the NFL. John Harbaugh introduced today as the Giants head coach. And today, the Tennessee Titans hired former Jets defensive coordinator, head coach Robert Saleh, to take over for the Titans. What was pretty interesting about this is, number one, the revisionist history among Jets fans and beat writers like Connor Hughes, who, again, it's never their fault. It's never the coach's fault. It's always the team's fault. It's Woody's fault. It's, the hot dog guy's fault. It doesn't matter. It's never the coach's fault. It's almost like you didn't watch 3 1/4 seasons of Robert Saleh making terrible decisions during games and not developing a quarterback. I mean, what were they watching then? Now, that doesn't mean that Robert Saleh is going to be a bad coach for the Tennessee Titans. So let me rephrase it. So that's that. Sometimes you just learn, your first run didn't go that well. You take a break. You go to coach the Niners again, as a defensive coordinator. The Niners had a pretty good season. They got smoked by the Seahawks. And it's kind of funny too how 2 days after his defense got smoked by the Seahawks, gets hired by the Titans. So it's like not exactly where I'd want my swan song to end as a defensive coordinator with San Francisco, but hey, it is what it is. But what's kind of funny is the top 3 candidates in Tennessee, and this is proof that nobody wanted to go there, by the way. It was Saleh, Matt Nagy with the Chiefs, the offensive coordinator for Kansas City, and the Packers defensive coordinator, Jeff Hafley, who took the job with Miami. So really it was down to Matt Nagy and Robert Saleh. What I found really interesting was the decision to pick Robert Saleh, knowing full well you have a young quarterback in Cam Ward. So hiring a defensive coordinator who doesn't have a good track record of developing a young quarterback should make Titans fans nervous. Now, that all depends, of course, on who he decides to make his offensive coordinator. Mm-hmm. There's already been discussions that he would like to bring Mike McDaniel to Tennessee. So that could be a possibility, although Mike McDaniel is in the running for head coaching jobs. He's interviewed with the Cleveland Browns, but he's also interviewed to be the offensive coordinator in Philadelphia. And I think I don't know if it was Minnesota. I believe there was one other team that he just interviewed to be the offensive coordinator. I'm not sure who it was off the top of my head. I can't remember who it was. Those options alone are better than being the offensive coordinator in Tennessee, even if it means being next to your buddy, Robert Saleh. So it also depends on who he wants to work with. Would you want to work with Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley and Devontae Smith? I don't know if A.J. Brown will still be on the Eagles. I have a feeling he'll get traded at some point during this offseason. or do you want to go work with Cam Ward and nobody really that great? It's
Yeah,
a very young team. It's a very young wide receiving group. It's Tony Pollard, who may not even be on the team this year. The Titans are in a pretty much a full-blown rebuild right now. And what should concern Titans fans about Saleh is that Saleh just, it was almost like I hate to use the term like con man, but I also feel like Jet fans got really duped. Because when they hired Saleh, they were looking to hire that guy that was running up and down the field like a psycho when he was his first stint as defensive coordinator for the Niners.
Mm-hmm.
That guy who everybody swore would play for him with passion and everything. And we just didn't see it. We did not see it. We didn't see that Robert Saleh and maybe that was just because he was not a defensive coordinator. Maybe it was just the fact that he was the head coach. So maybe he had a higher standard. But it was really shocking how it was almost like the last 2 years of Rex Ryan. Remember the last 2 years of Rex Ryan after the Jets after their window closed on the AFC Championship games, and you just saw more of a subdued Rex Ryan, not a guy that was like that bluster and that attitude that made people want to play for him. Right. In those first 2 years when they went to the AFC Championship game. It was really disappointing. He didn't have a winning record in any of the seasons he was with the Jets. His first year with the Jets was eerily similar to Aaron Glenn's first year with the Jets. And then he managed to have 2 consecutive 7-10 records. And then even in the year the quarter of the way season when he got fired, he was 2-3. He didn't even have a winning record there either. And that was, whether that was with Aaron Rodgers or not, the fact is he still didn't have a winning record. Yeah. It was that year, last year, when Saleh's last year in New York before he got fired, that week 1 game when they played the 49ers on Monday Night Football with Aaron Rodgers. Okay. That is a team that you worked for a lot of years. Are you telling me that you don't know how to scheme for Brock Purdy, knowing full well that you were on the same team with him, just coaching the defense? That you don't know how to maybe slow down Christian McCaffrey with your defense? That was what was so mind-boggling to me about Robert Saleh. It was the fact that he came to New York and he sold everybody a bag of goods, and we all bought it. Not only did the fans buy it, the players bought it.
The fans bought it because they saw that, like you mentioned, that lunatic essentially on the sidelines for the 49ers.
And that's what we wanted.
We wanted that because that's what we loved in Rex Ryan. Like with those early Rex Ryan days, like you mentioned, you saw him screaming, running up and down the sidelines, being involved with the game and everything, screaming at the players. You didn't see that. You didn't see that with Todd Bowles. You didn't see that with Robert Saleh, who we all were expecting that, especially after we saw Todd Bowles have essentially no emotions on the sideline. And here we go hiring Robert Saleh, who was gung-ho, yeah, I'm going to scream at you, run up and down the sideline. I need the hold back guy, all that stuff. And we didn't get that.
And it was just infuriating because, he brings in Michael Floor. Michael Floor had potential to be a good offensive coordinator. They draft Zach Wilson, fine. I was fine with it. I had a feeling they were going to trade Darnold anyway that year because I just didn't think they were going to roll the dice with going back to Darnold. And then he disappoints and then watching Zach Wilson be successful. I never got the sense that Darnold was going to be here for the long haul. Mm-hmm. But again, they couldn't develop Zach Wilson. You basically gave him the job. He didn't audition. He didn't have training camp. And in the preseason, he barely played because you had to protect him.
Yeah.
You had to protect him because you don't want him getting hurt. So you literally gift drafted him the job and he didn't have to do anything for it. And that was red flag number 1 with Zach Wilson. So the second part of it is you didn't develop Zach Wilson. Then you turn around and then it becomes the Mike White show. And the players are wearing Mike White t-shirts which is now crushing the confidence of your rookie quarterback. That kid thinks that those players don't want him around.
Yeah.
That's a terrible look for the organization, and that's a terrible look for Saleh because he let that happen.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the defense was fine the next couple of years that Saleh was there, but the fact that he couldn't get the offense going was a big deal. And now the Tennessee Titans, who have a young quarterback in Cam Ward, who's going into his second season as an NFL quarterback, this is the make or break year for Cam Ward. Cam Ward needs to have a major step up this year. And my question is, how can I possibly trust Robert Saleh to develop my second-year quarterback? That's what scares me. Because, go ahead.
I was going to say, what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to do like what like the Jets kind of did this year. I mean, granted, it didn't work out because Steve Wilkes is terrible, but they're going to have to bring in a seasoned OC to be to help work with Cam Ward. Whether maybe they bring in like Jamie mentioned, maybe they bring in a Brian Dable. Maybe they go out and get Mike McDaniels or so. They have to bring in someone seasoned. They can't bring in a guy who was the passing game coordinator for the Texans, or they can't do a first time OC. I think they have to bring in someone seasoned and someone who can develop a quarterback to help develop Cam Ward, because Cam Ward didn't have a bad season, but he had a rookie season. That's all he had. It wasn't like fantastic.
Okay, so in Cam Ward's defense, Brian Callahan was a terrible coach. I mean, by far one of the worst coaches we've ever seen. Which is interesting because he was the Bengals offensive coordinator and who coached Joe Burrow.
Right.
Like pretty much. So it was very surprising that he was not able to really develop Cam Ward. So Cam Ward was already at a disadvantage because he had a bad coach. He got a little bit better towards the end of the season, though, when it was Mike McCoy, when he took over after Callahan got fired. Now, McCoy could definitely be a possibility for OC, although it always seems awkward for an interim head coach to kind of be demoted, and would they want to take that demotion,
right,
to be an OC. But Saleh's got to build a roster from the ground up, basically, because they're all very young guys. They have a couple. There is some talent that can be if developed the right way, has potential to be good. But I just can't put my faith in Robert Saleh if I was a Titans fan, when there was definitely some possibilities for offensive coaches. You could have easily tried to throw, maybe he's not my personal favorite, but you could have tried to throw some big money at Mike McCarthy, maybe to come in and work with Cam Ward. Saleh doesn't have the track record of developing a quarterback. Now, here's the funny thing, though. He gets hired by Tennessee, and then everybody says the same thing. Oh, well, he was with the Jets, and the Jets were terrible and whatever. He made them terrible. Like, he was a reason why they were terrible. Who do you blame for the team not being for the team not being prepared? Woody Johnson? That's on Saleh. Saleh's in charge of making sure that team is ready to play when you're the head coach.
Mm-hmm.
And more times than not, the offensive game plan was terrible. And then, going back to that, if he really believed in Mike LaFleur, then he should have went to bat for Mike LaFleur when he was with the Jets. He didn't. He let Woody Johnson fire him. He let Joe Douglas fire him. And then they bring in Nathaniel Hackett, who was a disaster. Are you telling me that Saleh was, and I know why they brought in Nathaniel Hackett. They brought in Nathaniel Hackett to get Aaron Rodgers. But are you telling me that Saleh is okay with Nathaniel Hackett, who didn't even last one season in Denver? I mean, that's what I'm talking about. So where are you finding, how can I trust Robert Saleh to build a coaching staff?
Right.
And then making it worse, Hackett aside, he brings in Todd Downing and he brings in Keith Carter, who were two failed coaches with the Tennessee Titans. And after Hackett got demoted and they put Downing in the offensive coordinator position, it didn't get much better. It wasn't bad. It wasn't great. But for a guy like Rodgers, it should have been, having Rodgers as quarterback should have been 10 times better than what it was. And that's with an offense with Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson.
Yeah.
So the question is, can you possibly trust Robert Saleh to build a coaching staff that's going to get the most out of your second-year quarterback, who's now going to have to learn an entire new system?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what concerns me. Because, again, if you looked at the people, the three finalists for the job, it almost seems like nobody wanted to go there.
Right.
Unless, like Jamie said unless it's a guy who just is desperate to get back in the league.
Well,
Desperate to be a head coach.
I'll say you can even equate that to say Aaron Glenn. You know, the Jets fired Aaron Glenn this year. What coaches are going to want to come here? You know, we don't really have a lot of promising things. You know,
People
the same thing.
People think that just because owners have a lot of money, they can just spend it however they want.
Yeah.
And to an extent, you're right. However, that person has to want to be here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And with the regards to Glenn, the Jets have dug themselves a pretty big hole. They're not going to get, they were never going to get, for all the Jet fans who were on Twitter complaining and bitching and moaning and saying, well, what are they doing? They have to fire Glenn now and hire John Harbaugh. Did you really think John Harbaugh was going to come here? Like, all kidding aside, this team has no structure right now. They're still building it.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't even really laid a foundation yet. That's the crazy part about it. And for Jet fans I love them, but they're very naive. And they just assume that guys are going to come here to save the day. And Harbaugh was never going to come here because there's no foundation yet. They don't have a quarterback. They have a couple of good players. I'm not saying they don't. Garrett Wilson's good. The offensive line is good. If they bring Breece Hall back, that's even better. Even though I'm not the biggest Breece Hall fan. Your defense needs to be completely overhauled. So outside of Garrett Wilson and an offensive line, what do you have here?
Yeah, exactly. At least with the Giants, you have Jackson Dart, you have Cam Scatterbo, you have Malik Neighbors and Wan'Dale Robinson. You have a decent online. The Jets only have one of those two things.
And you have two pass rushers in Abdul Carter, who really wasn't that great this year, but he's a rookie, and Brian Burns.
Yeah.
And the thing is like you just have a little bit more of a foundation to work with. It's like John Harbaugh sees Jackson Dart, reminds him of Lamar Jackson. He can work with that. Neighbors comes back healthy from his ACL tear. That's an elite receiver right there, folks. You know, the Jets have Garrett Wilson, but right now we don't have a quarterback. We don't even know how the team is going to approach free agency with all that money. But the Jets have dug themselves such a hole that they cannot convince a hot defensive coordinator candidate to come here. You know, the report was that Jim Leonard, they interviewed with Jim Leonard, which is great. But if you're Jim Leonard right now and you see this foundation, do you really, and the possibility that Glenn could be one and done or two, after the second year, he could be toast if the Jets don't show improvement. Do you want to hitch, do you want to hitch your wagon to that? And that's a big question that Jim Leonard has to answer. Jim Leonard's getting recruited by the Cowboys. He may think the Cowboys is a better situation. He might wind up being the defensive coordinator for the Giants, for Harbaugh. Because Harbaugh is going to be there for a while. So he could easily stay there for a year or two calling defensive plays and then maybe build up to become a head coach.
Right.
The Jets have dug themselves in this hole. So the coordinator candidates they interviewed 8 coordinator candidates last week. They interviewed Leonard. They interviewed Jim O'Neill, who's a defensive assistant for the Lions, who worked under Glenn, who a lot of people think is a dark horse for the position. They interviewed Ephraim Banda, who's a safeties coach for Cleveland. They interviewed Matt Arujo, who's the cornerbacks coach for Miami. I mean, these are young guys too. Like I was looking at the ages of a lot of these guys. They're all in their 30s, like early 40s, except for Jim O'Neill. And of course, Wink Martindale, who's like 63. Wink Martindale is exactly the type of coordinator that Aaron Glenn is probably going to hire because he wants to get back in the NFL. So it makes sense for him to come here. And honestly, I have no problem with Wink Martindale coming here. Wink Martindale is a former defensive coordinator for the Ravens. He was a good defensive coordinator for the Ravens. He was a good defensive coordinator in his first year with Daboll with the Giants. I mean, it makes sense. Now, he didn't really do much in Michigan last year, and then he was not brought back after Sharon Moore was arrested. But the second year of Daboll wasn't really great. He got fired during the season because the defense really regressed. So you got to ask him about that in a way. But it almost seems like a perfect match. He's a veteran coordinator. I don't think Aaron Glenn can really sell the Jets fan base on a rookie coordinator.
No.
I think it's going to be difficult. I'm not saying it's not possible, but I think it's going to be more difficult. For example, Ephraim Banda, who could be a great coach, right? He coached the safeties in Cleveland. Grant Delpit's one of the top safeties in the league because of Banda. The secondary, 6 interceptions last year in the secondary for Cleveland. Those are the types of things you want to look at as like, oh, okay, this guy's on my radar. So it's not that I don't think Ephraim Banda could be a good defensive coordinator. I just think you have a tough time selling it to the Jet fan base because they are going to want immediate results. I think a guy like Wink Martindale can handle that. It's not that I don't think Ephraim Banda can. I just think it's going to be putting a ton of pressure on him because this defense was so bad last year. It was bad. They didn't have a turnover. They didn't have an interception all season, and they were 31st in the league in sacks. So there's no way that you could really sell this fan base on Ephraim Banda. And that's not knocking the guy. It's just a fact.
And I was going to say, you can even say the same thing about Jim Leonard. I mean, you're going to sell Jets fans on Jim Leonard because what he did here with the Jets in 2009 and 2010.
But you know what it is, Clem? Jet fans love the name. They see the name and they're like, oh, we got to get him. We got to get Kevin Stefanski. We got to get, never mind the fact, like I said, Kevin Stefanski, 8-26 in his last 2 years in Cleveland. We got to get this guy. We got to get this guy. These guys all flamed out with their other teams. They're retreads. They're just names. It's not going to do anything for you. Do you really think that Kevin Stefanski is going to come here and turn the Jets around just because they have the ability to draft a young quarterback? Mm-hmm. It's a lot to ask of Kevin Stefanski.
Yeah.
It's a lot to ask of Mike McCarthy. That's how it is, man. And, for me, it becomes one of those things that it's going to be a tough sell because right now I have no idea what the strategy is for this team going into the offseason. I just don't have any idea. They have a lot of money to spend. They got to figure out a way to get players to take it. Then you got to make sure you find the right players, and you got to make sure that they're not just taking the money and then they're going to play like garbage when they get here. And then you got to find a defensive coordinator to really motivate these guys and to get after the quarterback. And, now the one thing that I've read about Glenn is he likes Wink Martindale because he runs a very aggressive defense, which is what he wants to see. At the end of the day, it almost makes sense for him to be the coach just because if Glenn gets fired after year 2, it's not really a big deal for Wink Martindale. He's like, yeah, okay, whatever. Like I just came here for a year. And, I know what I walked into. I think these younger guys might be a little bit more, shaken up by it because then they're going to think that they were the problem. And Leonard is a guy who everybody loves, but he's never called a defense before. He's never called plays before.
Right.
So, I mean, under the right tutelage, sure. The only thing that worries me, and I kind of thought about this too, is like, if you really want to shut Jets fans up, Glenn should hire Rex Ryan. Everybody be on Glenn's side in 5 minutes at that point.
Oh, absolutely.
But I also think at the end of the day, Glenn's got to just, it's going to be tough. Like, it's just going to be a tough sell this year. It's not that I don't think it can be done. I mean, but it's going to be a very tough sell because right now the number one thing you don't have, you desperately need, which is a quarterback. And if they don't see a winning roster, they're not going to sign here, man.
Mm-hmm.
They're not. They'll go sign with other teams before they sign with us.
Yeah, you're not going to get a friend. Not that there really is any franchise turnaround quarterbacks in the free agency this year, but the only quarterbacks you're going to get are the Tyrod Taylors, the Mitch Trubisky's, the Jimmy Garoppolos of the world. Those are the quarterbacks the Jets are going to be working with next season until 2027, when we can look at a CJ Carr, an Arch Manning, a Dylan Raiola, a Dante Moore, someone like that.
Now, here's what I'm going to say before we close it out. I'm making a prediction right now. Okay. And I don't know why I keep saying it. So last year, now, I can't prove this to anybody because we didn't have a show last year during the offseason, so I can't go back to the tape and tell you. But last year, during free agency, I said to a friend of mine at work, I said, I don't know why, but I'm so convinced the Jets are going to sign Justin Fields. I said, it just seems like it makes sense. They need a quarterback. He needs a redemption tour. I said, it just makes sense. And sure as hell, they signed Justin Fields. So I'm making a prediction right now. I am predicting that the New York Jets quarterback in 2026 is going to be Tua Tagovailoa.
Oh, don't say that.
But why? Why not? Why?
Because the guy's made of paper and glass. That's why.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay. Now, there's two things holding it back. Number one, do the Jets really want to help the Dolphins? I would say probably not. But the Dolphins want to get rid of him, and you need a quarterback. So would you rather roll the dice with Tua Tagovailoa, or would you rather roll the dice with Marcus Mariota, who is going to be 35 years old and is probably not going to really do much with the offense, even if he was a starter? He's a manageable quarterback. I'm not saying he's not. But my point is that Aaron Glenn needs to win now. Like, he cannot afford to have another 3-14 season or 4-13. So he's got to go get a better quarterback than what's on the market. The free agent class stinks. If you want to sign Russell Wilson to be a backup quarterback, no problem. But I'm not signing Russell Wilson to be a bridge quarterback to a young player. So
I don't know. I'm not a fan of Tua whatsoever. And I think he was carried by good wide receivers in Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle.
Okay. There we go. Fair enough. And you know what? You should have two good wide receivers. That's what should make you a good quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So the Jets have a good wide receiver. His name is Garrett Wilson.
Yes.
All right? If they bring in another wide receiver, either through the draft or free agency, then fine. Okay? They also have a good tight end in Mason Taylor, and we'll see what happens with Breece Hall. We don't know what's going to happen with Breece Hall. So, Tua stats over the last few years. Okay. Now, the one concern about Tua, like you just said, is the concussions. So if you're going to go this route, it is imperative that you get a good backup quarterback, a good veteran. And if that guy happens to be Tyrod Taylor, so be it. Okay. To be honest, you know who I would, I know you guys are going to laugh when I say this, but you know who I would bring back as my backup quarterback next year? Justin Fields. And I know what everybody's going to say. Oh, but he sucks and everything. I would rather have a younger Justin Fields backing up Tua than going the route of, I mean, geez, give me a backup. I mean, that's
Mitch
not
Trubisky.
a Mitch Trubisky. There we go. Because he can use his legs. Maybe Engstrom will figure out a way to use more of the replay of the RPO with Fields. And he's young. Trubisky really has accomplished nothing. He hasn't even been a good backup. I mean, either way, if we have to go to a backup, we're screwed. So it's not going to matter. And you're not going to get an all-pro quarterback to be a backup quarterback in this league. If that's the case, then you know what I would do? Then I would sign Spencer Rattler to back up my quarterback. He's young. He turns the ball over a bit, but, I think he's capable. It's not a bad decision if you think about it.
I say, who I would love, and I said it last year too, I would love as our quarterback, Jameis Winston. I would really love.
I would love him.
I would love Jameis.
He's under contract though.
I know.
So I don't think the Giants. I don't think the Giants will trade him. If you want a dark horse quarterback, I mean, this is really outside the box, but I could definitely see it being a possibility. And it really depends on who the coach is and what they feel. Do not sleep on the possibility of Shedeur Sanders. Because I don't know what coaches like working with a kid, working with him. They know the ego. They know his old man. Could be they may not want to deal with that. It's possible. I'm not saying definitely. It is possible. It's very possible that they could just say, you know what? I'm going to cut bait with this guy. I'm going to go bring in this guy, and that's it. Now we're going to go back with Tua. Okay. For the most part, he's been fairly durable. Hasn't been perfect, but he's been durable. So 2025, he was not good. This year, he was not good. Played in 14 games. He threw for under 300 yards. He had a completion percentage of 68%. Threw 20 touchdowns and 15 interceptions. Okay. Now, we go back to 24. He played 11 games. He threw for 2,867 yards. He threw 19 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. His best year was probably 23, when he threw for 4,600 yards, 29 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. Go back to 22. He played 13 games. Threw for 3,500 yards, 25 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. This is not a bad quarterback. He's may have just run his course in Miami. And since the Jets are not drafting a quarterback anyway, I can't think of, you could do a lot worse than Tua Tagovailoa.
Agreed.
And I don't think it's going to cost you much because the Dolphins are probably desperately wanting to get out of his contract. So the Jets have the cap space. His cap hit is ridiculous, so there's no way the Jets will take that as is. They will definitely have to restructure that deal. But outside of that, and even Tua readily admitted that he thinks a change of scenery would be better. Maybe he'll play with a chip on his shoulder. Maybe he'll be motivated. Maybe, who knows? I don't know. I just keep coming back to seeing Tua Tagovailoa in a Jets uniform.
Oh, boy.
And I again, I'm not saying they're going to be a playoff team. I'm not saying that, yes, this is the best decision the Jets have made in years. It's a major roll of the dice. But again, this is the hole the Jets have dug themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't have a choice. Glenn doesn't have a choice. Darren Mucci doesn't have a choice. They have to get a better solution at quarterback than Justin Fields. You're not running it back with Tyrod next year. So you are only going to run it back with, you need to do something.
Yeah, you got to get another quarterback.
You got to be able to get Garrett Wilson the ball. Mason Taylor needs to have Mason Taylor is actually decent in his rookie year. He had 44 catches. for a tight end. I don't remember the last time a Jets tight end caught that many balls in a season.
We've had bad tight ends.
You know, if you find a way to franchise tag Breece Hall and convince him to stay, that's another positive right there. And like I said, Clem, I don't know why. And I don't know why the Jets would ever want to help the Miami Dolphins. But I just keep saying to myself, the next quarterback of the Jets in 2026 is going to be Tua Tagovailoa.
All right. We'll mark it down at January 20th, 2026 at 9:37 p.m.
All right, before we get out of here, you got anything?
That's it for me. Just
All right,
I was gonna say it's great to it's great to have Jamie back. It was great to have him back on. You know,
Yes,
it's
Jamie's
like pick it up like old times, and like for him to just even come out and joke around with us, like we were doing the podcast like a week or two ago. Like it was great time having Jamie on.
You know, it felt good communicating, getting in touch with like former, guests that have been on our show. We've been reaching out to guests about coming back. Jake Asman's been a really good friend of ours. He's always found a way to take time out of his busy schedule to come on and talk sports with us for like 20 minutes or so. Same thing with Jamie, same thing with a few others. You know, we're working on a lot of stuff, and hopefully you all stay along for the ride. But it's been a lot of fun so far. I definitely feel like I've been more motivated than recently. So it's something I just want to keep doing. We're going to keep trying to get many people on. We're going to start cutting up our shows, putting them up at Reels on Facebook and stuff. And hopefully we can generate some, just have a lot of fun with it and everything. One last thing for me really quickly. I'm just going to really quickly just talk about the Knicks, and then we'll call it a night. This is one of the first times that I've seen the Knicks as a vulnerable team. And I was watching the highlights of the game yesterday against the Mavericks where they lost by like 17. And that was one of the first times in a long time that I felt like the Knicks were just completely disinterested in playing defense. And they have been getting destroyed. Now, the beauty part of it for the Knicks is the East is so weak that they didn't really lose much ground. Like maybe Detroit gained a couple of games on them, but they're still right on Boston's tail by a game. Although Toronto's making a run now at the 3 spot in the seeding. This roster is very top heavy with Mikal Bridges, Karl Anthony Towns, Jalen Brunson, OG Anunoby, and Josh Hart. Very top heavy. Their bench is terrible. Clarkson's not bad. I keep hearing about Tyler Kolek, but yet I never see him play. And that's really the fault of Leon Rose because he built this roster. And you really see the flaws. The Mikal Bridges trade looks like a disaster for the Knicks. He has not played as effectively as, I'll put it this way. Mikal Bridges is a good player, but he is not playing like a guy who is worth 5 first-round picks.
No.
Not even close. And that trade was insane when they first made it. So there was no way Mikal Bridges was going to live up to that expectation. And you really see the difference in the team when Jalen Brunson's on the court to when he's not on the court. And what should scare Knicks fans too is Jalen Brunson is starting to get hurt a lot more. He's already missed a few games, luckily not a lot, because of ankle issues. The one game where he walked out on crutches, they thought he was like out for the season. It turned out he was only out for like 3 games. He just got back from a sprained ankle. This is a little bit of a troublesome thing for the Knicks right now and for the fans because this is their ride or die guy. This is their star player. He sets the mood for the team, and if he can't be on the court, they're in trouble. They're in a lot of trouble.
Jalen Brunson puts his body on the line when it's during the regular season and during the playoffs, and it's like you say, it's starting to show with the wear and tear that that's coming to him now. And like you said, when he's not on the court, this team struggles. Now it's Karl Anthony Towns usually takes a big brunt of when he misses. But again, you're asking a lot out of a guy who also always gets injured.
Yeah. And now look, there's plenty of season left. But the trade deadline is right around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
And the trade deadline is happening before the All-Star break, which is a little unusual to me. And right now, the Knicks don't have a lot to offer. I don't know how they could fix this roster. I mean, of course, you could try to trade Karl Anthony Towns. There's always the rumor about Giannis wanting to come to the Knicks and all that stuff. But right now, the way this team is constructed, they're in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And they have not played well. And I'm not even sure what they can give teams at this point.
They have to find the magic.
I mean, the Nets not only own their picks for 5 years, but they also own pick swaps with the Knicks. They have their 2026 first round pick, but we don't really know where that is. And we don't know where it's going to wind up. We don't know what the value of that pick is. But it's like, I think Knicks fans should be genuinely concerned because there's been a lot of speculation that Mike Brown could be already on the hot seat because the team has been playing bad, but it's not really Mike Brown's fault. Mike Brown didn't build this roster. He didn't overload the starting five and then not really pay attention to the bench.
Right.
I mean, I don't know what the level of concern is with Knicks fans right now because, again, you're in the East. So you're still in it regardless. You're still the number 3 seed. You're right within striking distance of Boston for the 2nd seed. So, and I'm sure eventually the Knicks will go on a run, but something's got to be fixed. And I'm not entirely sure it's the head coach, and it's not Jalen Brunson. So what are we doing? Because they have not played good defense all season. Like you could see that Tibbs's defense is nowhere near this team, and it's the same roster as last year. Outside of a couple of fringe free agents like Yabusele and a couple of other guys, the starting 5 is still the starting 5.
Yeah,
Mitchell Robinson is still backing up Karl Anthony Towns. So
you still have the meat and potatoes of the team, and yet somehow this team looks worse than it did last year.
The defensive principles of this team it's like gone from Tibbs. Like Tibbs must have really gotten everything. He literally got blood from a stone on this team because they're just not playing the same way under Mike Brown. And now there's already an article today saying that Brunson had to call a players only meeting.
Oh boy.
And if you're calling a players only meeting with the Knicks, that's not good.
No.
That's not good. Now tomorrow they play the Brooklyn Nets, who they should beat because the Nets you can't even tell if the Nets are tanking or not. And now with the story about Jimmy Butler out for the season with a torn ACL, that could put the wheels in motion for the Warriors to make a deal for MPJ, to rush out a deal. So that Sean Marks and Jordy Fernandez are going to protect Michael Porter Jr. by any way they can because his value is only going to go up.
Right.
So I don't expect the Nets to win it all tomorrow. I expect the Knicks to smoke them tomorrow, especially at Madison Square Garden. But outside of that, though, the Knicks have just looked like a very ordinary team. A lot different under Tibbs, and they hated Tibbs. But maybe Tibbs was always the right coach for this roster.
Yeah.
Because right now, I mean, it's not Mike Brown's fault that this is the roster he got. I mean, there's nothing he could do. But it's really bad. And this is like the worst I've seen it right now. The good news is for them, they've got plenty of time to fix it, and they play in a very weak conference. So it won't take much for them to go on a nice run and get right back into the swing of things. All right, well, that'll do it for this episode of Moffett on the Mic. Thank you, everybody, for watching the show, courtesy of YouTube, courtesy of StreamYard. You can follow the show on Instagram at Moff on the Mic. You can watch past episodes on Apple Podcasts. You can also watch past episodes and listen to past episodes on Spotify. Clem, thank you for holding it down like you normally do. And again, a very special thank you to our good friend Jaime D'Amico for coming on to talk some Buffalo Bills football. Hopefully Bills fans' minds are eased listening to the wisdom of Jaime D'Amico because he knows all. And that's most. So, but we'll be back really soon with another show. We're working on some guests. We'll try to figure it out. But until then, on behalf of Clem, this is Craig. Wherever you are, have a great night, and we'll see you later. Take care.